Hey, it's Jay. Welcome to another Prickly Pear video.
Hey guys, this is Jay. Welcome back to another Prickly Pear Project video. I just wanted to share with you something that inspired me and thought I would walk you through it a little bit in case you want to do a riff on that as well. We're looking at the Christmas Trees 2, I believe, stamp set. This coordinates with the die that we were using on the Hop project. I actually used it in an interesting way too, which is the remnant from when I cut it out the die. I actually wound up using that as a stencil. So I stenciled these in lunar paste, then cut these out. So this was sort of a nice little find as a to an additional way that you can use what would basically be scrap. But since it was foil paper, it was a little more rugged than just normal cardstock. Anyway, well, we're getting a lot of mileage out of this tree set, which I think is what's great about prickly pear stamps generally, is you can get a lot of mileage out of the same thing. So I stamped the tree 3 times in Memento. I was sort of the inspiration for this particular card is Crafty Owl's latest Also Inspired challenge, because basically it was a pattern of the same stamp with one of the elements colored. So I'm planning to color in this guy, and I haven't quite decided what color I'm going to use. I want to pull in one of these background colors. I thought we'd do a little non-traditional Christmas with pink and mint, although I feel like Spellbinders has been doing that for enough years that like it might be traditional now. And then we have a little piece for our sentiment, and this is 1 by 4, and I just rounded the corners. But let's get to coloring. And I wanted to do a card type that I don't see a lot, but I think is a really fun and versatile way to go. I think I'm going to go with the green turquoise blend because I think that would be a nice sort of midpoint between this like a mint green and a blue. And I'm gonna go start with the middle one, and I'm gonna just sort of start doing a little coloring on these little swoopties. Because to me, this particular stamp really gives me vibes of sort of winter snow swirls. And the thing I like about these tri blends is because they have all the colors together, they're just a really easy way to kind of get into coloring stuff, especially for something like this where I really just want to get some color down and I really just want to let the stamp do most of the work. But, um, it depends on you. You could certainly do this technique and do a much more in-depth color than we are doing here today. So with sort of my dark color laid down, I'm going to grab the lighter color and then go back over everything, basically. One thing about tri-blends to be aware of, though, is depending on the color, um, there may be a lot of variation between a couple of colors. If you run into that, what you can do is take your lighter color, which is going to have more blender in it, um, which is sort of by blender I mean sort of the base solution that the colorant is suspended in. And I'm just going to go in and color that. I'm going to come in with a little bit of a darker color for the shading and just sort of feather that out. Now, depending on how rustic you like that, if you don't like a little splotchy like that, what you can do is go in with a blender. And I don't know if I have the right one. I don't. And basically, I'm just going to go and try and push that color. It's going to push it back into the paper, but also away. So anywhere you put your colorless blender, it's basically going to um, push the marker away. And when will take a minute to dry, but when this dries out, it should give you, it will at least diminish that. And as you can see, I have a good bit of bleed through as you do with alcohol markers. But you can see where this blender is really pushing that color back into the area that I wanted it to. Um, and if it doesn't take it all the way out the first time, you can always do it a second or third time and just sort of work with that. But I didn't know that for a long time, and then I wound up just sort of throwing out stuff I colored because there was some area on it that wasn't great. And, you don't have to. And I found my long missing magnet. which is sort of a story for another time, perhaps. But the my magnet was actually uh, on the bottom, stuck to the bottom. Oh, I should move this. These magnets are not liking being that close to each other. Anyway, so moral of the story: if you ever lose a magnet for your Misty, look on the bottom of your Misty; it might be there. And I'm going to use this Happy Holidays sentiment that I've been using all of the holiday season. This actually comes from the Sketch Poinsettia die set. And as you can see, like this has improved dramatically. Anyway, I think I'm going to use this in the park color because that'll kind of harken back to sort of the both the teals and the mint. Again, it's sort of an in the middle color. If you are going for more of a traditional color scheme, obviously there are a lot of options that you could use. Red, green, or blue work really well. I particularly like, I guess in this line it would be Cranberry Fizz and Deck the Halls are the inks I've been really enjoying. But there we go. We have a nice happy holidays. And the reason I keep using this one is I really like the block font on it. It's really one of my favorite kinds of fonts. I tend to go appreciate the blockier fonts more than the scriptier fonts. I think that's mostly because I find them easier to read personally, but you could certainly do this however works best for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab either a scoreboard or a trimmer with a scorer in it. And what we want to do is score this card base and be careful because we don't want to like cut the card base in half. My trimmer has a gray one for the card base, and sorry, gray is the score blade, and the black is the not score blade. This is a standard A2, so this is 4 1/4. So I basically going to 2 1/8 to put a score line right in the middle. This doesn't need to be like super duper specific. And there we go. What we're going to do is make a horizontal easel essentially. So all I'm going to do is grab the score line and fold it. And you can go and reinforce this with your bone folder if you so desire. You don't necessarily need to do it on this card. And if you don't have a bone folder, you can just use your finger. Basically, what we want to do is mount the panel here. And then when this opens, the panel will stand up quite nicely. And we're just going to do that by making a stopper out of this guy with a little bit of foam tape. You could also just build up a couple die cuts if you're looking for a more streamlined sort of thing. So I'm just going to take my panel and can take either wet glue or you can take dry adhesive. It does not really matter for this particular card. I tend to find wet glue makes it a lot easier to line things up. So you have like that moment where you can readjust things if you do an oopsie, which you don't really have with dry adhesive. You just have to do it enough that you're skilled, I guess. Been talking to a lot of newer card makers who've had questions lately about videos and whatnot, and I think I think one of the things is that people who are able to line things up are really able to do it because they practice essentially. So this will glue down together pretty quickly. These are both thin card stocks. What we can do is just rub that out a little, make sure that all of our glue is properly squeegeed. Again, a bone folder can be used for this, or one of my friends likes the ergonomic bone folders. But basically, we want to put glue on this part of the card and then glue this here. We don't want to glue down the back of the card, essentially. You could measure it here. Often I find it's just easier to put glue on the card base at this point. We're not doing anything that's going to require a lot of movement on the part of this part of the card, so this should work quite well. And then we just want to mat it so when somebody gets this initially, they don't really know that there's a secret. And I don't see a lot of easel cards done, which is what this is. And then this is how it would stand up. And we just have to decide where we want to put, how far up we want to put our sentiment. So we could put it all the way down at the bottom, and then you're going to have more of a, probably easier to see this way. So you can, this is where it would be if it's down at the bottom. I tend to like it sort of in the middle, so it stands up and it's a little bit more, I don't know, perky, I guess. You can also use things like a T-square, or you could put a pencil line in terms of getting this lined up. Now, even if we didn't do anything, even if we didn't build up any additional layers, we would kind of have a stop here. But I kind of like using foam tape for this. I have some sort of medium profile foam tape in my stash, which I've been really enjoying. And you can measure this. I generally sort of eyeball it and then trim as needed. We're probably going to need, we might need a second one. I'm going to need like a little sort of a piece like that, but then we're going to need to cut it down the middle essentially to make a thinner strip. Um, some companies also make strips too. So if you have the foam adhesive, like the sheets or the strips, those would work well here because this always is a little bit tricky to try and cut these apart, especially if I forget to use my glue scissors. But here we go. And we'll save the rest of that for another project. And this is the piece I cut, so we can just lay that in here, and then we have pretty good coverage. And then I just want to cut this a little bit at the end off. And you see we just have some foam on the back, and then when we peel that off and stick it down, it'll give us a little more dimension, and that will hold our card together like that. So let's go and do that. This is one of my favorite card designs, just because it displays so nicely on a mantle, and it doesn't require a lot of like custom cutting. As I mentioned, like we basically did this with a just a standard card base. So those are some of my favorite fun folds just because, and what I'm going to do is make sure I don't stick this down first, but if I line this up on my mat, it will help me sort of gauge where the middle of this is. And then whoop, I'm just going to eyeball it a little bit. And there we go. So that's our finished easel card, inspired by Crafty Al, inspired by someone else, since we're all kind of inspired by each other. We have sort of a, you can kind of get a sense of the angle, but this will set up really nicely on a mantle. And you can still have space up top to write your message. So it's got sort of a fun little peekaboo element to it. So happy holidays from us here at Prickly Pear, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week.